Guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a limp, and unfortunately, I'm here with the final part of Nemo's War. This is just some final thoughts about the game. Obviously, it's a definite recommend. 100% love this game. And if you haven't, make sure you go ahead and subscribe because I am going to be doing a big giveaway once I hit the big 10K on subscribers. So make sure you hit that button down below for me. It has come to pass. We have reached that time where our example playthrough has come to an end. Yes, I didn't get all the way through it, but we got through a good chunk of it to let you guys see how the basics of the game's going to play. Now, right off the bat, if you've watched any of the previous videos, you know I can't say enough good stuff about Nemo's War. They really came out swinging on this latest iteration of it, whether or not you had the previous versions, whether or not you got the brand new edition that they just released to Kickstarter, everything's good to go. Of course, we all know we're playing as Nemo in his Nautilus as he sails around the world's oceans, taking on the imperialist powers, getting treasure, inciting riots, and sinking enemy shipping. When it comes to all of that, we have to take a look at our components, and the components for this game are top-notch. None of them are bad. They hit the high spots for any war game or any game that you want to play. Nice plastic components when we need them, things like these little gems. They could have used tokens, but they used the little plastic gems because they just look better on the board. Just good stuff. I love that. The little wooden cubes when we're doing incites, right? And we place these around the oceans to indicate where we've incited little riots. Even to the fact that we've got wooden cubes now for our ability points, or our action points rather, our notoriety level. I like that. Again, they could use tokens, but it's nice just to have the little wooden piece. It just makes the game feel that much better. And especially since this is a solitaire game mainly. Yes, there is a multiplayer component to it, but mainly it's primarily solitaire. You want to have the nicest components you can on the board. The board itself being mounted, excellent. I just don't think this game would work anywhere near as well if it was just a regular paper mat. And then the tokens themselves, all of them are nice, thick, quality, excellent pieces. And I especially love the ships, right? As you start filling up the ocean, which my ocean filled up completely. I had hidden ships all the way across the board. I couldn't believe it. But then you start flipping those and you have enemy ships start to show up. So you start going around targeting this ship, that ship, trying to keep the oceans as quelled as possible as the imperialist powers rise up. We, of course, have our treasure tokens, of which there are many because there's so many pieces of treasure to find that each game's going to feel fresh because you're going to keep finding different tokens of treasure each time you play throughout each round. And then the specialized tokens that I thought were quite neat as well. Things like these little half circles that we have to keep track of our resources when it comes to our ship. Or our attack token, all right? So our stalk, or if we're doing a bold attack, that way we could lay it down directly on whichever ships we're targeting, just like, hey, that's where we're going. All of that type stuff could have been represented just with a regular token, but they took the steps to give the game that unique individual feel, which I really appreciate. The biggest component to the game, of course, is the adventure cards, because that's pretty much what's running the engine of the game itself. And these are, again, great quality, just like the others. I did notice in the gameplay between the expansions a very, very, very slight coloration difference between some of the expansions. But again, it's so slight as to be unnoticeable. Well, I shouldn't say unnoticeable because I did notice it, but such a small noticeability that it's not going to affect your gameplay, right? It's just one tiny little niggle that I found when it came to the components. That brings us to gameplay, and when it comes to gameplay for this game, that's one of the most outstanding features, because when it comes to solitaire games, one of the things that I've always kind of hit on is that some solitaire games you don't really play, you just kind of read it. The game plays itself and tells you what happens, right? Some of the ones where you just roll dice and you're not getting to make a whole lot of decisions, or the decisions that you make aren't that impactful. In this game, It is nowhere near like that. You constantly have to make choices. Are you going to refit your ship and repair the hull damage that you took in the previous turn? Or are you going to go after that piece of treasure you need? Or are you going to go after enemy ships so you can upgrade your ship for the future turn? Or maybe you want to take an adventure and try to get some more points because the game's getting down towards the end and you're getting to that crunch moment. There's just a vast amount of choice when it comes to this game, and you can play each game with a different type of strategy of what you're going for. And then when you throw in things like the fact that it is variable action points each turn due to the dice roll, and the fact that you can have lull turns, so you need to try to hold on to an action point just in case you don't get an action point in the next turn. Or maybe you want to try to get that upgrade so you can get free action points during your lull turns. Things like that just affect every choice that you make in this game. And even when we're talking about that, that brings us to the motives that you're going to have, of which there are many. Each one of these tokens is double-sided. We have war, piracy, anti-imperialism, exploration, world order, science, and all of these have different levels of points that they add to you for whatever it is you're doing. Attacking enemy shipping, or getting treasure tokens, or exploring, or even the adventure cards themselves have different modifiers on them depending on what your motives are. And speaking about that brings us to the last point that I wanted to bring up to this game, which is the replay factor when it comes to it. Because when you get a solitaire game like this, one of the biggest things that you want is replayability. You want to be able to play it again and it still feel fresh. It still feel like a new game. And this game does that straight out of the box, right? Just the base edition with no expansions has a fair amount, but it only had 50 of the adventure cards. And again, that's the engine that's running this game, because you're going to be flipping those each turn, depending on your motives, again, how many that you're going to go through in each phase. But these are the engines that runs the phases of the game. With there only being 50, then over a course of a handful of games, you would see the majority of them, and you could kind of expect of what was coming. You wouldn't know for sure, because a good chunk are going to be in the adventure deck and didn't need to be drawn, right? You have to draw your ones on the upper left, but you don't have to draw these ones here on the upper right. However, with the expansions that are available now and the sheer volume of cards that they add to the game, there's no way you can know what to expect. And I've played this game a handful of times, and I still have yet to have a game where I have not encountered a adventure card that I had not seen before. So when you add in the sheer amount of the adventure cards, the different motives that you can have that are going to change what your goals are from game to game, the fact that you're rolling dice to determine how many action points you get and where the enemy ships pop up, there is simply no way for you to make a set game plan. You always kind of feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants and having to adjust as the game lays itself out before you. Encompass everything that you need to do. There's just too much variety, too much variability of what could possibly happen. You might do really well and get a lot of treasure tokens at the start and keep your ship in good repair, or you might get busted up by some bad draws with the adventure cards or the adventure deck, and suddenly you need to spend a few rounds trying to repair your ship. But during that time, enemy ships start populating the map more and more and more, and now you've got to try to put out that fire before you're overwhelmed, because they start applying those negative modifiers. And then even on top of that, you have your specific crew members, like your first officer, your chief engineer, the other passengers you have, who give you little sacrificial bonuses, but you have to sacrifice these guys to get that bonus. But you see, they apply points at the end of the game, so you don't want to sacrifice them. So taking the chance to sacrifice one of these guys has to be a key moment. It has to be a choice decision to make sure you're able just to complete the game, because you want to hold on to these as long as possible. And I have to say, that has to be one of the biggest draws. The gameplay is fun when it comes to Nemo's War. It's just a cool game. The way it plays out, the way everything works with each other. It's a unique game. I haven't seen another solitaire game that plays like this and has as much depth, has as much replayability, and has a game that gives you the choice that this game gives you. So yeah, obviously this one's going to be a recommend, and it's going to be a highly recommend, especially if you get the expansions for the game as well, because the expansions, the ones that add things like extra upgrades for your novelists and extra adventure cards, they really do make the difference, because you want those extra adventure cards mixed into your deck. It gives you extra finale cards, so you never know what the ending's going to be. You can't prepare yourself for what's going to come. You can only make the best choice possible in the moment and hope that you're prepared and you can survive, and then that you've actually hit enough points to win the game. So yeah, Nemo's War, the 3rd edition of it, absolutely 100% recommend getting. Definitely check it out. It should still be available on their website. Make sure and check it out if you haven't, especially the newest one that adds all the adventure cards to it, because that is just key. That really changes up the landscape of the game, and it is so worth it. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this example of Nemo's War. Put any comments or questions you have down below, and stay tuned because I've got some good stuff coming up. Y'all take care. I'll see you in the next one.